Hello and peace be with you. It's very nice to be able to just take a few moments to just kind of a check in with all of you, to say hello to you, to assure you of my ongoing prayers, to offer a few words of encouragement, but also to share some information about where we're moving in these very unsettling and uncertain days. As you know, Governor Whitmer just recently, just yesterday actually, extended the stay home, stay safe executive order until the 28th of May. And obviously in keeping with our goal also to protect and to safeguard the well-being of all the common good, we too are extending the dispensation from attending Mass, of course, throughout that same period of time, but also it delays what we were hoping to be able to return to public worship perhaps earlier than the end of May. This is nothing that any of us envisioned for what was going to be taking place in the year 2020, the year of the Eucharist. We had, I think all of us, very high hopes for how we would be not only being able to receive the Eucharist, but how we would be really encouraging a deeper love for, a devotion to Jesus present to us in the Eucharist. So these last days and weeks that we've been kept from being able to receive the Eucharist or even being present for the celebration of the Eucharist has been very, very disconcerting to all of us. And I'm sure that, like I do, I'm sure that all of you are very much looking forward to that time when we can return to not just to receive the Eucharist, but to the public celebration of our faith. But while we look forward to that return, we also just have to make sure that we're kind of fighting against any of those temptations that we might have to let worry or anxiety or fear or even impatience get the best of us. Rather, if we can just keep trying to make the best use of the time that's available to us as new opportunities really to just deepen our faith in ways that we didn't have available to us before, and to be even more united with all of those throughout the world who are suffering as we are, who are going through this, and particularly to try to identify ourselves with those who are sick, those who are suffering. To be very, very grateful for all of those who are fighting this battle firsthand against this awful virus. I want to just assure you that I pray for you, all of the faithful and priests of our diocese each and every day. And I know your priests are praying for you and with you as well. I, at the same time, in mentioning that, want to express my gratitude to our priests, our deacons, all of our parish leaders, our diocesan staff as well, who have just been so creative and so generous in finding ways to be in touch with all of you electronically in ways of live streaming the Mass, devotions, catechetical programs, or just words of trying to keep you current on any happenings within the life of the parish. That's been happening on our diocesan website, your parish websites, Facebook, Twitter, all of those amazing electronic media that are available to us. It's not the same as the real thing of being present, but it's certainly a wonderful way that we can continue to be connected to one another. Many of our churches, I think most of our churches, have remained open, if even for limited times during the day, so that if you can and are able to come to spend some time before Jesus present in the Blessed Sacrament, that is a wonderful opportunity as well. During these last recent days, I have been consulting with our priests and our deacons. We had a series of deanery meetings last week. And during those meetings, I was able to review with all of the priests and deacons our proposed plans for how our celebration of public Mass are going to probably end up coming in phases. and the changes, the issues that we're all going to have to be very mindful of. Besides those consultations with the priests and the deacons, I've of course been meeting with our diocesan staff, and also we've all been reviewing a number of guidelines that are being put together by people with great authority, people with medical expertise. These guidelines that are being proposed through the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, the Federal Diocesan Liturgical Commissions, various other groups that have a lot of insight in terms of communicable diseases. What are the kinds of steps that we're going to need to take in order to be able to return to public worship? We'll be providing very shortly to all of our priests a series of instructions, as I'm referring to it. It's just a list of very strongly encouraged steps that we're all going to have to take, first of all, in order to be able to prepare our parishes before people even start coming back, before we're able to even begin to think about public worship. What steps are we going to need to take in order to get our churches ready and all of our other parish facilities ready in terms of sanitation and hygiene, and trying to remove from the pews, for example, all hymnals and things of that nature, so that we're not having those things that others have touched, things that are trying to, where we're much more mindful these days now of ways that viruses can be communicated. There will also be a set of guidelines, perhaps a briefer, but still a complete set of guidelines that will be made available to all of the faithful. I'm hoping that we can have those ready by the end of perhaps next week, so that you can have a sense of how will things look differently when we do return to public Mass. For all of the faithful, we realize that the dispensation from coming to Mass is going to probably continue to be provided for the foreseeable future, because certainly not everybody's going to be able to return to Mass. There are going to be very stringent guidelines for who can come to Mass. So people that have already vulnerable conditions, who are in at-risk categories, people who are suffering from other kinds of ailments, we're strongly urging those individuals to stay home, because it's probably not safe for you to be able to come. For those who will be able to come, we'll be strictly following all of the social distancing protocols, and at this point, it looks like we'll all be needing to wear masks when we come out of our homes and go anywhere, including coming to church, and probably needing to have those masks on throughout the celebration of Mass for those more limited numbers of people that are able to come. We will, I'm envisioning that we'll be having a phased-in approach for returning to public worship. There will be, because of the social distancing, there will be a limitation on the number of people that are able to come. And that's going to be a reality, because we can't be seated any closer than 6 feet from one another. And we will be roping off every other pew. We'll only be seating people in every other pew. So as you can see, that already limits the numbers of people that will be able to come to the capacity of the church. Probably only about a third of the capacity of the church will we be able to have together once we get beyond any other restrictions that the government provides for groupings of people that are able to come together. There will be some parts of the Mass that probably we'll have to adjust and modify so that we don't necessarily or unnecessarily have too close of a contact with one another. So more than likely the taking up of the collections will have to be done differently rather than passing the basket. Probably We won't have the offertory procession for a period of time. The sign of peace will probably just be able to be a nod and an acknowledgement to our neighbors rather than a touching or reaching out to others. And the distribution of Holy Communion is going to take some additional thought about what's the best way for us to be able to do that, to make sure that we're worthily distributing Holy Communion, but also doing it in a way that is going to provide for everyone's sanitation. As I mentioned, there will be phases. Phase 1, it will be just a limited number of people that are going to be able to come to Mass. And for as long as phase 1 is in place, then gradually we'll move to phase 2, which would be a broader number of people, and finally back to phase 3 is what we would be calling it, when any other restrictions are removed. And so I think we're all beginning to see that even though we might be able to start coming back to Mass in the relatively near future, I'm hoping that will be Pentecost for the first phase, that it's going to take some weeks, perhaps months, until we're able to be back to our full capacity. But if in fact Pentecost is the day that we're able to begin to have public worship, what a wonderful way to be able to celebrate that great special outpouring of the Holy Spirit. And we'll be praying in a very, very particular way this year for His many, many gifts to come to all of us, the gifts of wisdom and counsel and understanding and fortitude and knowledge and piety, and the great fear of the Lord, the awesome reality of God's great love for us. Eventually, there will be a Mass of Thanksgiving. I was hoping that might be around the time of Pentecost, but obviously that's not going to be the case. We don't have a date yet for when that when that gathering will be, but probably sometime this summer. As I wrote in my most recent letter to all of you, From Darkness to Light, a hope for a new Pentecost, as I said in that letter, I say to you again here, my hope and prayer is that despite this traumatic period of time through which we're still living, that we will allow the Holy Spirit, who filled the hearts of the first apostles and turned them from fearful followers into fearless witnesses in the first generation of the church, that same Holy Spirit will change our hearts, transform us from passive participants to active promoters of our faith in our generation of the church here in Southwest Michigan, in spite of the challenges facing us. May God bless you. May God bless us all. Farewell.